Alright, so something pretty cool happened today that I've got quite a few thoughts and feelings and opinions about that I wanted to share, talk to you guys about, and I figure now's a good opportunity as any. A few hours ago I was queuing on North America and I managed to snag the Legendary Division, and I'm rank 1 NA. I'm the very top of the leaderboards for North America, and well, I think that there's actually a lot we can say about leaderboard queuing and trying to be competitive PvP, and where it's actually meaningful and where it kind of falls flat. First of all, I would say don't look into this too closely right now, because we're early in the season. Being early in the season means, first of all, that not everyone's participated just yet, but also that there's very high volatility, right? When you start queuing on a ranked season, you get the idea of doing your placements, and you get a pretty special UI for that. But really, what's happening is they're just hyper volatile games. You win a ton of rating for your first game, or you lose a ton of rating, and then you win a ton, and slowly a little bit less, little bit less, little bit less, until eventually you balance out to around getting plus or minus 12s for well-matched games. That's kind of the way that it works. But so if you squeeze out a very high rating like I have here, if you snag the top leaderboard spot early on while everyone's very volatile, well, it may not actually be that representative. I genuinely don't think that I play consistently enough with the kind of builds that I play, the kind of things that I do as I play, to be a pure legend player. You kind of have to really be a bit of a tryhard for that, which is kind of the subject of this video. You know, I'd consider myself lower than that. The last time you saw me, this is the first time I've ever been at the top of the leaderboard. The last time you saw me near it was when I was doing fresh air queues, which was a bit back now, and I got like top 3 or something. So, yeah, let's talk about that. A lot of you guys are going to be thinking, wow, WP did it. That must mean, A, the season's like really uncompetitive, or what is it that I can do to actually win? And I think the main thing I want to express to you all is that most of climbing high and doing well with PvP is getting fundamentals in terms of skill and so on down. But it's mostly playing the right build and playing kind of metagaming other things about choosing the time of day to play and how you choose to queue. Okay, so basically we kind of live in a weird world, I think, where if you're really going for the big tag and you're really going very high, your odds of doing well are actually going to be more oriented about stuff separated from your skill, right? You can hone and train and be perfect at knowing exactly how much pressure you can deal and when you can have to leave on your particular build. You can be a master kiter, you can be excellent at reading team fights and having brilliant situational awareness, but all of these things pale in comparison to duo queuing, or making sure that you don't queue into negative matchups that are coming up game after game after game after game. So let's talk about it. First of all, yeah, the idea of duoing. If you guys want to do very well, pick yourselves up a duo. Solo queue is a massive gamble. What the matchmaking system is trying to do at all times is get you to win one, lose one. That's what it's trying to do. And so when you start climbing very high and you've got a lot of rating, what it's going to do is try to have your team balance out your high ratings. So it's going to put you with a bunch of much weaker allies, so that then, you know, across both teams there's about an even amount of MMR. So you're going to be the best person on your team. You're not going to be able to trust your allies very much. There's going to be you, and the better you are, the wider that gulf between you and your allies becomes, as the more dead time of day it might be. If you duo, you can eliminate a huge amount of that. It is absolutely possible for 2 solid players to carry 3 really bad players, okay? If you can get yourself into a situation where you're queuing at a time of day where everyone's pretty much kind of bad, but you've got a solid duo, you can do very, very, very well. Now, I think that's important to be very clear on. You can carry bad allies. There's a bit of a thing out there where I see a lot of people don't think that's true. They think that there's just times a day where you absolutely shouldn't queue. And that's definitely true for solos, and that's definitely true if you're experimenting with builds and you're not trying that hard. But if you are trying hard and you are a duo queue, you can go any time of the day and spam wins. Nearly everything is carryable. In a world where you have 3 really awful allies, the likelihood is you've got at least 4 really awful enemies too. And if you play builds that abuse them enough, and make them mess up enough and ruin them hard enough, you can carry through it. And so it's because of this fact that you kind of actually have 2 choices for how you want to get to the top of the leaderboards. Both are actually perfectly viable. One is to play at prime time in evenly matched games and be a skillful player and work at it the proper way. But also, there's this idea of deliberately queuing into these games where you have rubbish allies but also rubbish enemies and going for the big sprees off peak. So let's talk about this. If you choose to queue when it's not prime time, you're gambling a ton of rating. Your wins are only going to give you like +2 or +3 rating. And your losses are going to sack you down hard. You're going to get slumped with -20s, -25s, -30s even, right? Especially if you've still got some early season volatility going on. It's really bad to queue off peak when you are the enormously much better player than everyone else on the entire team. However, if you put yourself into those scenarios, I do believe it's possible to have a strong enough duo that you just win chain. So here, I'm currently on like a 17 win spree. I think it's actually a 19 win spree because of some prior EU games. I'm on like a huge win spree, but that was because I queued with a reasonably solid duo at an hour where there wasn't too much competition. And this isn't the first time I did this. In the previous season, where, you know, I ended at the Plat 3 border on... This was an EU season. This is an NA season I'm doing here. But on this previous season, I had several enormous win sprees of 20 games plus, right? I had at least 2 or 3 20-game plus win sprees. I think my highest one went up to 25 or 26 games, where I just won in a row. Just kept winning and winning and winning and winning. And I was only getting like +2 rating each time. But as long as me and my duo partner were willing to keep queuing in the dead of night, I'm talking like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. queues, we could just keep grinding them up. And all the good players who are queuing at prime time, they just wake up the next day and see these users that have queued. They've just popped up out of nowhere. And then naturally we tank ourselves back down by playing apart from one another, or by playing not during prime time, or playing unsteady builds, which is what I always end up doing, because leaderboard to me is very much secondary to having fun with builds and spamming games for Byzantium chests, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's such a good gold farm and it's such good shards. So yeah, that's an unfortunate, ugly side of the game that I really do think's there. The idea of playing non-meaningful games, but enough of them in a row, and solidly enough that ultimately it does make a meaningful rating gain for you. And I've done it several times, and I know several other people will do it a lot too. There's another little fact here as well that people do to improve their odds on the leaderboard, even though it has nothing to do with their skill, and that's the idea of queue dodging. This is actually something I've done a little bit before at the behest of other people who care more, but even I was a beneficiary of earlier just today. The idea of queue dodging is, if I am queuing and I realize my particular build is being countered by an enemy's particular build, and he's the only high-rated player at this hour, and I'm the only high-rated player at this hour, so every single game we get, the matchmaker will put us versus one another. Like, guaranteed, it will do it. And as long as he's having fun playing, which he probably is because he's winning, and as long as I keep playing because I'm stubborn or I've got no life or whatever, we'll keep matching against one another. And because his build trumps mine and I'm not swapping, and he's more practiced or whatever, maybe he's just a straight up better person, at the end of the night, we have cancelled each other out in an incredible way. He's like rocketed up and I've slumped way down. So what you might like to do instead is just not queue against that person. So that's the idea of queue dodging. There's a simple fact you should understand about Guild Wars 2 queuing, and that is, by the time 6 minutes have rolled through while you're in the matchmaker, it is trying really hard to find you a game. It will throw anyone and anyone across all of Guild Wars 2 into a match just to get you in. It's extremely rare to have a queue take more than 6 minutes. Now, matches themselves are about quarter of an hour long. At the longest, 5 minutes at least at the shortest, right? So if I see that there's a bad guy that I don't want to be queuing against, or even an enemy duo that I don't want to queue against, maybe my duo sucks against their duo. If I see that, all I have to do is add them to my friends list, look at where they are in the world. It's the Heart of the Mist, okay, and you wait 6 minutes. And after 6 minutes, they probably got a queue pop. And you can even verify that on your friends list. You'll see they're in the Battle of Kylo or whatever. I mean, people could block each other and stuff, I guess. But if you wait 6 minutes, then go with your queue, it's very, very, very likely you'll be offset from them. And now you have a fresh pool of players to work with. and you can continue going back to your wins. So that is a very real thing that people will do to try to make sure that they get their wins. And here's how I benefited from that just today. One of the only difficult games I had really all day was against an enemy duo, and they were going for very high leaderboard spots, and we managed to beat them. Our duo beat their duo. So what did they do? They Q-dodged us. They said, oh, well, we don't want to do that again. And that was actually beneficial to us because some of the only people that could be of competition and threaten us now were saying, oh, we don't want to go for that. And so I just queue like normal at a regular pace. And, you know, it's 5 noobs on the, or 5 weaker players on the enemy team now. And I can get my comfortable win and keep rolling through. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Once you get a reputation or it's obvious that you're winning games, people who are good will actually avoid you. Because it's only the people who really care that are even engaging in this in the first place. And it kind of raises your odds even further, whether you're a willing participant in queue dodging or not. Anyway, a second ago, I just mentioned Byzantium chests and the idea of I'm having more fun getting the rewards, and so I end up tanking rating. That's an interesting, ugly side of this too, don't you think? I actually, now that I have this, I'm actually not super happy about it. In a way, I mean, I am happy, and I think it's pretty cool, but I'm in a weird place now where it's like, okay, do I actually want to hold on to this badge? If I want to hold on to this badge, I kind of force myself to queuing only at prime time, solo queue, where hopefully I don't lose too much rating if it's a loss, because it's going to be a well-matched game, right? But maybe I can squeeze a win out because I'm good enough, right? And then I can hold on to it. Or I have to do like this cheesy duo thing and just try to burn one game off, get like +2 rating or something, but keep fighting against the whole minimum games thing. But if I do either of those, right, and they're both potential ways of holding onto the badge, neither of them are very fun, neither of them much an expression of skill. If I do either of them, I can't kind of play a lot of PvP anymore. It's just too risky to play a lot of PvP. You will lose a lot. So what I want to do the most as an addicted person that really enjoys the combat and the traits and the different builds I can play, I'm kind of stuck now. It's like, well, what do you want to do? Play on an alt just to preserve the badge, but then you don't get various account-bound currencies and stuff, and that just feels bad, you know? I want the games on here. I want to finish off my 10,000th win. You know, I've got another 500 games or something to do. I want to get that, but now I can't. Or what? Am I just stuck doing automated tournaments? I think a lot of people who climb high on the leaderboard do end up in that situation. Many of the names you'll find at the top, they don't queue much. They queue very rarely and very precisely and very carefully, only when they're duo. And the rest of the time, they'll look for automated tournaments. Automated tournaments which do need the population, so that's quite a positive thing, but are very slow and boring in themselves. When you play in a good AT team, you're mostly just sitting around in Heart of the Mist for ages and ages and ages, like an hour and 20 minutes sometimes, just waiting so that then you have a single queue and you kind of slam your way through it. So it feels kind of weird. It feels like I'm not in a great position because I'm a fan of playing the PvP, and if you do that, you're just going to fall unless, you know, you're being very, very precise about this stuff. So, what else is there to say? Well, in terms of the construction of a good duo, I think that there's something else as well. If you definitely want to win games in, you know, off-peak times, or where you want your 2 players to carry your 3 worst players and all the worst players on the other team, I think it's really important to balance your duo queue where one's a side noder and one is something that can team fight and do damage. So one of my favorite versions of this, and my EU win sprees that are 20 plus regularly doing, those have been done on Scourge, me as a Scourge, a Blood Scourge, which I think is one of the most potent team fighting builds in the game, and with the Scrapper Ally. I really like doing it with the Scrapper Ally because I think that you round out each other's issues. For example, the Scrapper is really well countered by Warriors, but then I as the Scourge can rotate into that, and so anywhere my Scrapper worries, I can push into that. Or me as a Scourge, anything that I'm kind of counted by in a really ugly way, say a Condi Mirage or something get in my face, the Scrapper can swap with me there. Like any kind of downside one half has, the other can pick up. And when the 2 are together, you have this insane res potential because you have Function Gyro and you have Blood Res and you have Transfuse. And so I just get these ridiculous win sprees there. But the idea is mostly, it's not about the specifics of the 2 build, but it's one person who's holding a side and can kite while they're outnumbered, win their 1v1s and kite while they're outnumbered, and then the other player, the team fighter, takes that outnumbered advantage and just blows up all the team fights and every other engagement because they get the luxury of doing that. In this way, it doesn't really matter how weak your 3 allies are. you can tend to win. The one guy does damage and gets downs, you can trigger the rallies before the enemy team can, because they're always kind of one player down because they're investing so many resources to debunk your side noder. So I think that they're all very strong. This legend that you see here, this rank 1, this was me being the side noder this time. I was on Mirage for this, which I think is very strong, and we'll look at my Mirage build possibly in another video. And in addition to that, I just had, I think it was a Soul Beast today, a Knight Soul Beast, funnily enough. They were running around doing big damage, basically, swinging team fights by landing massive worldly impacts and getting as much damage as possible. And so that's how you can kind of just win spree your way through. Some other duos are obviously really strong also, like double side noder or double DPS. Rev Hollow is kind of very famous. I actually think Rev Hollow is very close to what I'm talking about. You know, the Hollow has some good 1v1 potential, and then the Rev as well. But, you know, they just kind of bomb around with CC and stuff. But I tend to find what I'm talking about works a bit better. You know, sometimes you'll find, like, a good competitive game, and I always sail through most smoothly. Break snowballs most smoothly. Hold the grip on the map most smoothly when I go with a very strict side noder and a very more strict kind of team fight setup. But your results may obviously vary. Here's the thing, you don't really have to play that well as long as you have the composition there. And you don't really have to be that great. You don't have to be trying that hard. In fact, I find myself, I can play very well when I play in short bursts, okay? And when I really, really want to think about the game very deeply. But, you know, I played like 17 games in a row today. And by the 17th queue, am I really doing that well? You know, I could provide you commentaries of loads of those games, but the gameplay's not going to be that good, you know? You get kind of spammy, you kind of slow your brain down a little bit. 17 games, several hours in. So you really need to have something solid if you're going to go for a big win spree like that and get as much value out of that period of time as possible. So yeah, that's kind of my understanding of the scene, and I did want to share that with you all guys. A lot of people will casually throw out on the forums or on streams or YouTube comments, they'll say, oh, division doesn't matter, the rank doesn't matter. And you may have heard that before. Hopefully this video expresses to you why I think that is absolutely true. The fact is there's a lot of RNG in queuing ranked at the moment. Where it's in this weird semi-solo, semi-duo scenario, and the matchmaker is always trying to turn it into a coin toss. It's always trying to make it heads or tails, right? And you just keep climbing and climbing, and it's more vicious about trying to get that heads or tails the higher you go. It just feels kind of random, you know, sometimes. Sometimes you'll just get someone who's having a bit of fun and playing like a core Ellie. Like, one of my hardest games today was playing with a core Elementalist, and it's just not very good to play a core Ellie, and it was a really tough game that we only ended up winning because there was a DC, right, on the enemy team. I mean, that's crazy. If that DC didn't happen, I wouldn't be having this badge right now, you know? So there is RNG in it, and the more games you play, the more susceptible you are to that RNG. It's very, very, very punishing when you lose. If you don't manage to get these win sprees going, you lose an enormous amount of rating. You know, if you're trying to get these peanut points from playing off-peak, you're getting like 3 rating a game, 4 rating a game, 6 rating a game, back down to 3. But if you lose one, you're losing like 25 in a single bulk drop down. So you're going to have to win like 7 games for every loss just to break even, right? So it's really important you're solid with those win sprees. You have a good duo that can do that. I tend to find that any duo, just as long as you have a bit of respect and trust in the person you're playing with, that they're actually okay at the game, it tends to go a very, very long way. And if you play solo, which is what I do, I'm mostly a solo queuer. I mostly play lots of stupid, weird, dumb builds on solo queue. If you do that, you're going to have a real tough time getting out of Plat 2 and Plat 3, both regions respective. So yeah, they're kind of my observations. Maybe I'll talk to you guys about my build and what I did with Mirage. I think a lot of people will be curious, like, exactly how that's set up. The truth is that there's very few good Mesmer players around anymore. Very few. And if you see some that you think are good, they tend to be very out of touch, or they don't actually think very deeply about the class. And you look at their gameplay, and they've really not got much of a clue what's going on. So maybe I can show you guys some of that off. It is a build that pretty much I curated for myself as the months have gone on. And, you know, we had the big CI nerf, so half the world is convinced Mesmer doesn't work anymore. But, you know, I just did it there. So there you go. Anyway, that was something that happened. And that's what I think about the leaderboards as of right now in 2019. I suppose we could do another production talking about how to improve that system because everything I've said here should feel kind of ugly to all of you. You should think, oh, that's kind of lame. So maybe we can start a discussion, start a dialogue about that in the comments, and I'll see whether I'm inspired to do something. But for now, are the leaderboards purely a reflection of skill so far? No. They're a reflection of a lot more than just how you play in the game. See you guys next time.